The quantum sensor array on Luna Base picked up the distress signal first. Dr. Sarah Chen stood frozen at her console, checking and rechecking the readings. After 15 years of scanning the stars for signs of intelligent life, humanity had finally received its first alien transmission. Director Hayes, she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You need to see this. The signal was weak, barely distinguishable from background radiation, but its pattern was unmistakably artificial. It originated from just beyond Mars' orbit, where no human vessel was scheduled to be. More importantly, it used modulation techniques that didn't exist in any human communication protocol. Within hours, the International Space Defense Force's fastest ship, the ISDF Hawking, was dispatched to investigate. Captain Maya Rodriguez watched through the ship's observation window as they approached the source of the signal. What they found was both fascinating and disturbing. A small vessel, roughly the size of a passenger aircraft, its hull covered in crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with internal light. No signs of weapons, Lieutenant Park reported from his sensor station. But I'm detecting one life sign. Very faint. The rescue operation that followed would later be noted in history books as humanity's first extraterrestrial contact. The vessel's sole occupant was a being that called itself an archivist, its translucent skin revealing complex patterns of bioluminescent organs beneath. Through a combination of mathematical equations and hastily assembled translation algorithms, it conveyed an urgent message. It was a refugee, fleeing from something it called the Dominion Empire. Back on Earth, in the heavily guarded United Nations Extraterrestrial Affairs Complex in Geneva, the archivist met with humanity's leaders. Its message was clear and disturbing. We have watched your species, it said through the translation matrix, its skin pulsing with patterns that the xenolinguists would later identify as emphasis markers. We have seen your potential. The Dominion Empire approaches your sector, and they must be warned about you. General Diana Williams, head of the ISDF, leaned forward. Warned about us. We're barely venturing beyond our solar system. The archivist's skin rippled with what might have been amusement or concern. That is precisely why you are dangerous. The Dominion Empire expects resistance to follow predictable patterns. They expect species to fight with whatever technology level they possess. But humans, the alien luminescent patterns intensified. Humans improvise. Humans take primitive tools and find unprecedented ways to use them. Humans refuse to follow the expected paths of technological progression. The assembled leaders exchanged glances. Dr. Chen, invited to attend due to her role in detecting the signal, found herself thinking of humanity's history of asymmetric warfare, of cave paintings depicting hunters bringing down mammoths with simple spears. I was sent to warn them, the archivist continued. My species has observed countless civilizations. We catalog their rises and falls, their innovations and mistakes. The Dominion Empire believes they can easily subjugate your world because your technology is primitive by their standards. They do not understand that this makes you more, not less, dangerous. How so? President Garcia asked, her voice calm but intense. Advanced species become dependent on their technology. They follow established patterns of warfare and defense. But humans, the archivist's skin displayed patterns that the translation matrix interpreted as both admiration and fear. Humans still remember how to fight without advanced technology. You maintain your primitive weapons alongside your advanced ones. You train for scenarios where your technology fails. Most importantly, you think in ways that the Empire cannot predict. The archivist's warning continued, describing an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds through superior technology and rigid military doctrine. But its most chilling observation was about humanity itself. Your species possesses a unique combination of traits we have never seen before, it explained. You have the ingenuity of a primitive species forced to survive against superior predators, coupled with the scientific understanding to comprehend advanced technology. You have the determination of a species that evolved as pursuit predators. Yet you've developed empathy and cooperation to a remarkable degree. You are simultaneously primitive and advanced, aggressive and diplomatic, individualistic and cooperative. As the meeting concluded, General Williams approached Dr. Chen. "What do you make of this?" Chen watched the archivist being escorted to its quarters. "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to start preparing. Not just with advanced technology, but with everything we have. Because if this empire ignores the archivist's warning and comes here expecting an easy conquest, they'll be expecting us to fight like a primitive species trying to use advanced technology." Williams finished. "Yes," Chen nodded. "And instead, they'll find something much more dangerous. A species that knows how to win fights with sticks and stones, but also understands how their fancy technology works." In the weeks that followed, humanity began its preparations. The archivist shared what knowledge it could, but its most valuable contribution wasn't technological information. It was the confirmation of something humans had long suspected. Sometimes, the old ways of fighting were the most effective, especially when combined with modern understanding. As they worked, a message arrived from deep space. The Dominion Empire had received the archivist's warning. Their response was brief and dismissive. "Primitive species require guidance and control. Prepare for integration." In her lab on Luna Base, Dr. Chen looked at the message and remembered an old quote: "Beware the old man in a profession where men usually die young." Humanity might be young by galactic standards, but they remembered every hard lesson their species had learned on the long climb from caves to stars. The Empire was about to learn those lessons too. The Dominion Empire's arrival was exactly as the archivist had described, a display of overwhelming technological superiority meant to inspire awe and submission. Their ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, each vessel larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, their hulls gleaming with exotic materials that seemed to bend light itself. Admiral James Chen watched from the hidden command center beneath Olympus Mons on Mars, his expression neutral as he studied the tactical displays. The Empire had positioned their fleet in textbook orbital positions above Earth's major cities. It was exactly what the archivist had warned them about. The Empire always followed their own protocols, never deviating from what they considered proven tactical doctrine. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," Lieutenant Rivera reported. "Standard Imperial First Contact Protocol, just as the archivist predicted." The Imperial message echoed through every communication device on Earth. "Greetings, primitive species. The Dominion Empire extends its protection and guidance to your world. Your resistance is neither required nor advised. Prepare for integration." In the Geneva complex, now moved deep underground, General Williams stood with the archivist, watching the Imperial ships through surface cameras. "They didn't even bother to acknowledge your warning, did they?" The archivist's skin rippled with patterns of resignation. "The Empire believes they have seen every possible form of resistance. Their databases contain millions of conquest scenarios. They believe they know exactly how a species at your technological level will react." Williams allowed herself a small smile. "But they've never encountered humans before." For the past 3 months, while the Empire's ships traveled through hyperspace, humanity had been preparing, but not in the ways the Empire would expect. There were no obvious military buildups, no attempts to rapidly advance their technology to match the Empire's level. Instead, humanity had gone back to basics. In the asteroid belt, mining operations continued as usual, but the miners were now practicing new techniques, ones that wouldn't register on Imperial sensors. On Mars, the massive cave systems natural to the planet had been expanded, housing facilities that looked primitive on scans but contained sophisticated hybrid technologies. Earth itself appeared largely unchanged, its cities still functioning normally. The Empire's initial scans showed exactly what they expected to see: a primitive species with basic space travel capabilities, some limited colonies on Mars, and simple mining operations in the asteroid belt. Their sensors, calibrated to detect advanced energy signatures, completely missed the true nature of humanity's preparations. Admiral Chen received the expected report from Earth's official government. They would attempt diplomatic contact first, playing for time. It was part of the plan. The Empire would expect this. It was how primitive species always reacted, trying to negotiate from a position of weakness. Execute Phase 1, Chen ordered quietly. Across the solar system, seemingly routine activities continued. Mining ships moved through the asteroid belt, their holds full of what Imperial scans would register as raw ore. Martian colonies continued their agricultural work, the massive greenhouses showing up on scans as simple environmental shelters. Earth's cities operated normally, their power grids running at typical levels. But beneath this apparent normalcy, humanity was implementing lessons learned from thousands of years of warfare. The mining ships were practicing complex maneuvers disguised as routine operations. The Martian colonies were actually hardened bunkers, their agricultural operations real but secondary to their military function. Earth's cities had been gradually evacuated, their normal operations maintained by minimal crews and automated systems. In her lab, now relocated to one of Mars's hidden facilities, Dr. Chen worked with a team of scientists, analyzing the Imperial ships through passive sensors. The archivist had been right. Their technology was incredibly advanced, but it followed predictable patterns. More importantly, it had weaknesses that only a species that remembered fighting with primitive tools would think to exploit. Their shields, she explained to General Williams during a secure briefing, are designed to stop energy weapons and high-technology projectiles. They create complex electromagnetic fields that can deflect plasma, laser fire, and even their version of kinetic weapons. But they've forgotten something fundamental. Which is? Williams asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. They've forgotten that sometimes the simple solutions are the most effective. Their shields are so focused on stopping advanced weapons that they've developed blind spots to basic physics. A simple rock, moving fast enough, could penetrate those shields because their sensors aren't calibrated to register it as a threat. The Empire's diplomatic delegation arrived exactly on schedule, their shuttle landing at the designated site in Geneva. They were met with appropriate ceremony by Earth's officials, who played their expected roles perfectly. The Imperial representatives were tall, elegant beings who moved with the practiced grace of those who had never known true challenge. The lead Imperial diplomat, who introduced himself as High Commander Vex, spoke with the practiced condescension of one who had performed this ritual countless times. Your integration into the Empire will be smooth and beneficial, provided you accept your proper place in the galactic order. Earth's diplomatic team responded with carefully calculated uncertainty and fear, playing to the Empire's expectations. Meanwhile, throughout the solar system, humanity's real preparations continued. They weren't trying to match the Empire's technology. They were preparing to fight in ways the Empire had forgotten were possible. As the diplomatic talks proceeded exactly as predicted, Admiral Chen received another message from the deep space monitoring stations they'd hidden in the Kuiper Belt. More Imperial ships were arriving, positioning themselves throughout the solar system. The Empire was following its standard conquest protocols to the letter. Send to all commands, Chen ordered. Begin Phase 2. The Empire was about to learn why the archivist had tried to warn them. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the most advanced technology. It's the one who remembers how to fight without it, while fully understanding how that technology works. The Empire's ultimatum expired at dawn, Greenwich Mean Time. High Commander Vex stood on his flagship's command deck, watching Earth rotate below with the practiced boredom of someone who had conquered hundreds of worlds. Begin standard pacification protocol, he ordered. Target their primitive defense installations first. The Empire's ships moved into precise attack formations, their weapon systems charging with brilliant displays of energy that lit up space like artificial auroras. It was meant to be intimidating. A show of power to convince primitive species to surrender before real damage was done. In his command center on Mars, Admiral Chen watched the Imperial fleet's movements with growing satisfaction. They're following the exact attack patterns the archivist warned us about. He noted to his staff, "Initiate Operation Slingshot." Across the solar system, humanity's response began, but not in the way the Empire expected. There were no massive energy weapons powering up, no desperate launches of primitive spacecraft. Instead, thousands of small objects began moving through space, objects that Imperial sensors registered as debris or routine mining material. The first sign that something was wrong came when Imperial sensors began having difficulty tracking all the movement in space. What appeared to be simple mining ships were breaking apart, each fragment becoming an independent projectile. Chunks of asteroid, seemingly random space debris, and what looked like primitive satellites were all shifting orbits simultaneously. "High Commander," an Imperial sensor operator called out, "we're detecting multiple objects on approach vectors, but they're not registering as weapons." Vex dismissed the concern with a wave. "Primitive attempts at space combat. Their missiles can't penetrate our shields. Proceed with the attack plan." The Empire's ships fired their first salvos at Earth's surface, expecting to destroy primitive military bases. Instead, their weapons hit empty facilities, automated decoys, and hardened bunkers that had been disguised as civilian structures. The real targets had been evacuated months ago. Then humanity's true attack began. The seemingly random debris in space suddenly revealed its purpose. Chunks of asteroid, accelerated by hidden mass drivers, struck Imperial ships at velocities that their shields weren't designed to stop. The Empire's sensor systems, calibrated to detect energy weapons and advanced technology, had completely missed the threat of simple kinetic impacts. "Impossible," Vex shouted as the first Imperial ships began reporting critical damage. Their technology level couldn't possibly. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "we're detecting numerous small objects approaching. They appear to be primitive nuclear devices." Humanity had taken their obsolete nuclear weapons and hidden them inside asteroids, using the natural radiation of space to mask their signatures. Now these weapons detonated in carefully calculated patterns, creating webs of electromagnetic pulses that played havoc with Imperial shields and sensors. From the Martian Command Center, Dr. Chen watched her theories being proven correct. "Their shields are failing," she reported. "They never expected anyone to use technology this primitive in space combat. They don't even have proper defenses against it." The Imperial fleet's perfect formation began to break apart as ships tried to dodge the constant barrage of kinetic weapons and masked nuclear devices. Their advanced targeting systems, designed to track energy weapons and high-tech projectiles, struggled to deal with thousands of pieces of debris, moving in seemingly random patterns. But humanity's real innovation came next. Hidden within the chaos of debris and explosions, small teams of space marines in suits that appeared primitive on Imperial scans were approaching the damaged Imperial ships. These suits, combining simple mechanical systems with cutting-edge technology, were nearly invisible to Imperial sensors. "They're inside Destroyer Group 7, an Imperial commander reported in disbelief. "How did they breach our hulls?" The answer was both simple and ingenious. The boarding teams had used simple thermal lances, technology that had been used to cut metal on Earth for centuries, powered by advanced portable fusion cells. The Empire's internal sensors, looking for high-tech energy signatures, completely missed these primitive cutting tools. Admiral Chen watched as the first Imperial ships began falling into chaos. Their crews, trained to fight with advanced technology, were now facing human marines who combined primitive hand-to-hand combat techniques with modern weapons. The Empire's soldiers had forgotten how to fight without their advanced systems. Humans hadn't. "Sir," Lieutenant Rivera reported, "Imperial communications indicate they're pulling back to regroup. They're requesting reinforcements." Chen nodded, just as the archivist predicted. "They'll retreat, analyze their failures, and return with what they think is a counter to our tactics." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal all commands. Begin Phase 2 of Operation Slingshot. Let's show them why you should never give a creative species time to prepare. As the Imperial fleet retreated to safe distances, they remained unaware that what they faced was only humanity's first layer of defense. Throughout the solar system, mining ships that appeared primitive on scans were moving into new positions. On Mars and in the asteroid belt, what looked like simple habitation modules were opening to reveal weapon systems that combined primitive principles with advanced understanding. In her lab, Dr. Chen was already working on the next phase of humanity's defense. The Empire thinks they know what primitive species are capable of, she told her team. They're about to learn that there's nothing more dangerous than a species that understands advanced technology, but remembers how to fight without it. The Empire's first attempt at conquest had been repelled, but everyone knew they would return. However, their retreat had given humanity something invaluable: confirmation that their hybrid approach to warfare worked. Now they had time to expand on these tactics, to prepare even more surprises for an enemy that couldn't comprehend a species that refused to fight the way they expected. 3 months after the Empire's first defeat, Captain Sarah Martinez floated silently in her mining ship near the rings of Saturn. Her vessel looked like a patchwork of primitive materials and basic technology, exactly what the Empire would expect from a human ship. But appearances, as humanity had proven repeatedly, could be deceiving. Contact, her sensor operator whispered, though sound couldn't travel through space. Imperial Patrol Fleet, standard search pattern. The Empire had returned with a vengeance, but their response showed they still didn't understand what they were fighting. They'd brought more ships, stronger shields, and better sensors, all designed to counter what they thought humanity's capabilities were. They still hadn't grasped that technology alone wasn't the deciding factor in this war. Martinez watched the Imperial fleet through passive sensors that resembled primitive radar systems, but incorporated quantum detection technology in ways the Empire never expected. Begin Operation Dust Cloud, she ordered quietly. Her ship, along with dozens of others hiding among Saturn's rings, began their carefully choreographed dance. To Imperial sensors, they appeared to be routine mining operations, extracting ice and minerals from the rings. In reality, they were executing a strategy that combined ancient hunting techniques with space warfare. In the command center on Mars, Admiral Chen watched multiple similar operations unfolding across the solar system. "Status report," he commanded. "Imperial forces are spreading thin, sir," his tactical officer reported. "They're following predicted search patterns, trying to locate our main fleet. A fleet that didn't exist in the form they expected. Instead of building massive warships to match the Empire's, humanity had created thousands of smaller vessels that blended primitive and advanced technology. Each ship could appear as something harmless: a mining vessel, a cargo transport, or even space debris, until the moment it revealed its true nature. The Empire's response to their initial defeat had been predictable. They'd analyzed the weapons used against them and developed countermeasures. Their ships now had enhanced shields specifically designed to stop kinetic projectiles and improved radiation shielding against nuclear devices. But as usual, they were fighting the previous battle. Near Saturn, Martinez's fleet sprang their trap. As the Imperial patrol passed through a particularly dense section of the rings, hundreds of seemingly innocent ice chunks began moving in precise patterns. These weren't simple projectiles. They were guided weapons disguised as natural objects, each containing a payload that combined primitive explosives with advanced antimatter catalysts. "They're updating their tactical doctrine," the archivist observed from its station in the Mars Command Center. Its skin rippled with patterns of fascination. "But they're still thinking like an advanced civilization. They expect you to fight with your most advanced technology, not to deliberately use primitive methods enhanced by modern understanding." The Imperial patrol near Saturn discovered this truth too late. Their enhanced shields, designed to stop high-velocity projectiles, weren't calibrated to detect chunks of ice moving at seemingly natural speeds. By the time they realized the trap, Martinez's fleet had surrounded them with what appeared to be a natural phenomenon, but was actually a carefully orchestrated weapon. "Execute," Martinez ordered. The ice chunks detonated in sequence, creating a cascade of explosions that used the natural debris of Saturn's rings as additional shrapnel. Imperial ships found their advanced sensors blinded by clouds of ice particles that had been specifically treated to interfere with their scanning frequencies. In the confusion, human boarding teams struck again, using what looked like primitive pressure suits but incorporated stealth technology in ways the Empire hadn't thought possible. They breached Imperial hulls using simple thermite charges guided by advanced targeting systems, proving again that sometimes the old ways were still the best. But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their hybrid technology, it was their adaptability. Every time the Empire developed countermeasures to their tactics, humans simply changed their approach. They fought like the primitive species the Empire expected them to be, but with an understanding of advanced technology that made their primitive methods devastatingly effective. "We've captured 3 of their ships intact," Martinez reported back to Mars Command. Their crews never even had a chance to send distress signals. Chen nodded in satisfaction. Each captured ship provided more insight into Imperial technology, allowing humanity to further refine their unconventional tactics. But more importantly, each victory demonstrated to the Empire that they were fighting an enemy unlike any they'd encountered before. "Their reinforcements will arrive soon," Dr. Chen reminded them during a strategy session. "They'll have analyzed every tactic we've used and developed specific countermeasures. But they're still missing the point. We're not fighting with specific tactics they can counter. We're fighting with principles they've forgotten." Those principles were as old as humanity itself: adaptability, creativity, and the understanding that any tool, no matter how primitive it might seem, could become a weapon in the right hands. The Empire's mighty fleet, for all its advanced technology, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to fight according to their rules. As the war expanded across the solar system, humanity's approach continued to evolve. They turned asteroid fields into deadly mazes where Imperial ships faced threats they couldn't detect until it was too late. They used the radiation belts of Jupiter to mask the signatures of their ships. They turned every primitive mining operation and colony into a potential ambush point. "The Empire's strategic doctrine is fracturing," the archivist reported, its skin patterns showing what might have been satisfaction. "They're beginning to contradict their own tactical protocols, something that hasn't happened in 10,000 years of conquest." Admiral Chen studied the latest battle reports. The Empire's mighty fleets were being picked apart by an enemy they couldn't effectively fight. Not because humanity was more advanced, but because they were willing to use every tool at their disposal, regardless of how primitive it might seem. "Send to all commands," he ordered. "Prepare for Phase 5. The Empire's main fleet will arrive soon, and we're going to show them why they should have heeded the archivist's warning." Throughout the solar system, humanity's forces continued their preparations, ready to teach the Empire one final, devastating lesson about underestimating a species that remembered its primitive roots while embracing advanced technology. The Empire's main fleet arrived with all the grandeur their technology could muster. 2,000 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their energy signatures deliberately magnified to create a spectacular display of power. Supreme Commander Ktar stood on his flagship's bridge, watching tactical displays with cold confidence. "This ends today," he declared to his assembled fleet commanders. "We will show these primitives the full might of the Empire." In the Mars Command Center, Admiral Chen watched the Imperial fleet's arrival alongside the archivist, whose skin patterns shifted between anxiety and anticipation. "They still don't understand, do they?" Chen asked quietly. "No," the archivist replied, its patterns rippling. "They'd brought enough firepower to subdue a dozen advanced civilizations, but they're still thinking like the Empire." The Imperial fleet's attack began with overwhelming force. Energy weapons powerful enough to crack planets targeted key positions throughout the solar system. Their sensors, now enhanced to detect the primitive weapons humanity had used before, scanned for hidden threats. But humanity wasn't fighting the same war anymore. "Execute Operation Ghost Dance," Chen ordered. Across the solar system, humanity's response unfolded in ways the Empire couldn't have predicted. Their sensors detected no massive energy signatures, no fleets of warships rising to meet them. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Dr. Chen's latest innovation proved devastating. Simple clouds of metallic dust, treated with compounds that seemed primitive to Imperial scanners, turned out to be sophisticated metamaterials that bent light and energy around human ships. The Empire's mighty weapons found themselves hitting empty space while their targets struck from unexpected angles. Impossible. Tar raged as reports of losses began flooding in. "They're using technology that our sensors say is centuries behind us. How are they doing this?" The answer came from Captain Martinez, now leading a fleet of ships that looked like cobbled-together salvage, but incorporated technology in ways the Empire had never imagined. Her vessels, appearing to Imperial sensors as little more than space debris, carried weapons that combined primitive chemical rockets with advanced antimatter warheads. "They've adapted their shields to stop our kinetic weapons," she reported to Mars Command. "So we stopped trying to penetrate their shields entirely. Instead, humanity's weapons created localized distortions in spacetime using principles that looked like crude gravitational manipulation to Imperial sensors. But the primitive delivery systems meant the Empire's countermeasures were useless. They were looking for advanced technology, not the simple physics principles that humanity had weaponized." The archivist's skin pulsed with patterns of revelation as it watched the battle unfold. "Now you understand why we tried to warn them," it said to Chen. "Your species doesn't just use technology. You understand the fundamental principles behind it. You can replicate advanced effects with primitive means because you never forgot the basics of how things work." The Empire's mighty fleet found itself fighting an enemy that refused to behave like either a primitive or an advanced civilization. Human ships would appear primitive one moment, then demonstrate understanding of principles the Empire thought impossible for their technology level. They used simple tools in ways that achieved effects the Empire thought required advanced technology. In the asteroid belt, Imperial ships faced waves of what seemed to be mining explosives, only to discover too late that the primitive charges were actually creating precisely calculated gravitational waves that turned their own shields against them. Near Jupiter, what looked like primitive communication arrays turned out to be sophisticated sensor jamming systems that used the planet's natural radiation to mask their true nature. "You could have built advanced weapons," the archivist observed as another Imperial battle group fell into chaos. "You understand the principles. Why choose this path?" Admiral Chen smiled slightly. "Because we learned long ago that the most effective weapon is the one your enemy doesn't think is a weapon at all." The Empire's formation began to break. Their mighty fleet, designed to fight advanced civilizations or crush primitive ones, found itself unable to effectively combat an enemy that was both and neither. Human forces struck from impossible angles, used primitive technology in ways that achieved impossible results, and turned the Empire's own assumptions against them. Supreme Commander Kar watched in disbelief as his fleet's casualties mounted. "They're savages," he protested. "They're using technology centuries behind ours. This cannot be happening." But it was happening. The Empire's mighty fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that understood both the most primitive and the most advanced principles of warfare. Human forces demonstrated time and again that true advancement wasn't about technology level, it was about understanding and adaptability. The final blow came not from some mighty weapon, but from a strategy as old as humanity itself. Having drawn the Imperial fleet deep into the solar system, humanity sprung a trap that would have been familiar to ancient hunters on the African savanna. The Empire's ships found themselves herded into killing zones where simple physics, understood perfectly and applied creatively, prove more devastating than any advanced technology. Send the signal, Admiral Chen ordered as the trap closed. Throughout the solar system, humanity's forces transmitted a single message to the remaining Imperial ships. You were warned. Humans are dangerous not because of our technology, but because we understand principles you've forgotten. Withdraw or face annihilation through means your sensors will never detect. Khazar stood amid the wreckage of his mighty fleet, facing a choice the Empire hadn't been forced to make in 10,000 years. How? He demanded. How can primitives defeat us like this? The answer came from his own tactical officers, who had finally begun to understand what they were facing. Sir, they're not primitives. They're something we've never encountered before. A species that understands advanced principles but remembers how to apply them with primitive tools. We don't know how to fight an enemy like that. In the aftermath, as the Empire's surviving ships retreated, the archivist's skin displayed patterns of satisfaction. You've taught them something they needed to learn, it told Chen. That true advancement isn't about technology level. It's about understanding and adaptation. Humanity had won not by matching the Empire's technology, but by proving that technology alone didn't determine the outcome of conflicts. They had demonstrated that a species that remembered its primitive roots while embracing advanced understanding was more dangerous than any purely advanced civilization. As the Imperial fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Chen turned to Dr. Chen and Captain Martinez. Send word to all commands, he ordered. But make sure it's transmitted using the most primitive communication methods we have. The message was simple. Remember what won this war. Not our technology, but our understanding. Not our weapons, but our adaptability. And most importantly, our willingness to use everything at our disposal, no matter how primitive it might seem. The Empire had learned its lesson. Humanity had proven that they were indeed too dangerous to subjugate, not because of their technology, but because they had never forgotten how to be primitive while learning to be advanced.